of steel from the market, it's doubtful whether we can regain the market anytime soon. This will be a fruitless effort. And the film was shot because the company wanted to boast its state-of-the-art facilities. The main message is that steel is present everywhere in all areas of life. So I just wanted to present this to you, to present those two short videos to you so that you can have the bigger picture. Of course, we'll not all steel plant workers. I have this background, so I was properly trained and educated, and this is very much my game. If you have any questions, then go ahead. I will be very glad to answer them. If not, then let's pass on the mic to Dominic, and he will carry on and conduct the rest of today's meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for those two introductory videos. I have to say that they made quite an impression on me. As well, I'm not myself a steel worker. I'm a sociologist by education, and I deal with conducting research, mainly not steel production. So the fact that I had this possibility to see those machines, that the names of which I cannot even remember and repeat, well, this made quite an impression, as I've said, and hopefully it also made an impression on you. Thank you for showing us these two films. They are extremely interesting, and they provide this background to our discussions, to those topics that we were discussing during the conference on EWCs. This shows us that there is a very specific context to the steelworks industry. It shows us that these are enormous plants, high investment facilities. They require a lot of capital, a lot of raw material, so that the whole industry operates well. It's necessary to coordinate a lot of processes that are investment intensive, capital intensive. Of course, it's also relevant to know about the historical context, especially in Poland, because in Poland, the construction of steel works in Katowice, actually Dąbrowa Górnicza, and in Kraków, this was an important milestone after the country was ruined as a result of World War II. The construction of these big industrial facilities meant moving to a totally different level, a totally different era, civilization-wise. These were big public institutions, as the steelworks were owned by the new state, the socialist state that was formed after World War II. A new working class was created back then, and the whole post-war period was this transition period. And we witnessed the transition of the transformation of social and political structures. We moved on to see the New Deal that had been shaping all over Europe. And for Poland, this meant high urbanization that accompanied all those industrial processes and industrialization. So to put it in simpler terms, people from villages, from rural areas moved to cities where big industrial facilities were constructed, and that is why they needed a place to stay. They needed flats, they needed services so that they can live their lives there. So this whole space and whole range of services for the new working class were necessary. What was of key importance as well was the ideology that was behind the whole industrialization process. People would refer to it with the term building a new socialist reality. And I have to stop now because Jose is leaving. Excuse me, I have to say goodbye very quickly, and hopefully I will get the chance to see you during next meetings, next sessions. Unfortunately, the planes do not wait for their passengers, so I have to leave now. Excuse me, please.
Kontynuując,
Thank you.
na
Goodbye,
poziomie
Jose, and let's continue.
indywidualnym to
On
podnoszenie
an individual
jakości
level, on a
zatrudnienia
personal level, this meant
na lepszy dostęp do większej
this
jakości
meant better
usług,
quality of life. This meant better access to
zdobycie
high
kwalifikacji
quality
zawodowych.
services. This
Nie
meant
tylko
obtaining new
podwyższanie
qualifications, as
ujęciu strukturalnym, ale
uh,
oznaczało to też po prostu
we
przejście
saw, and
z
this also
gospodarki
meant
opartej
moving
o
on from
rolnictwo
an economy that was largely based on
sektorem
agriculture, and this
dominującym,
sector back then was
większościowym
the dominant
po
sector,
przed
the
wojną, natomiast
sector where the
po II wojnie
majority
światowej
of
to właśnie
workers were
przemysł
employed. But
rolniczy,
after World War
gdzie
II,
stawał się
this started to
ważniejszą
be industry,
częścią
especially heavy
kraju.
industry, that
Oczywiście
then became the
zobowiązaniem
significant,
stratегiem
the
gospodarczym
major
narodowego
part
polskiego
of the
i
economy. This was, of course,
krajów
closely
sowieckich, to
linked
znaczy
to the economy
produkcja
of
była
the
prowadzona w
USSR
czasach
and
Związku
allied
Radzieckiego,
countries. So the
trwającej wtedy
whole
zimnej wojny,
transformation
zbrojeń i
was
tak dalej. Także ten
related
kontekst
to the Cold
historyczny
War, to the policy
oczywiście
of the
nam
USSR back
pozwala,
then.
jeśli ten film, który
We
przed
need
chwilą
to underline
oglądaliśmy,
that. We need
był
to stress that.
otwarcie filmem
And the first
propagandowym,
film you
przede wszystkim
saw, this was
komunistycznym,
open propaganda. It
określający
was
się
prepared, it was produced
pełnomocnictwem
by the communist authorities. So I
zachęcający
believe we need
do tego, aby
this
budować
little side note because it was a propaganda film. It
rzeczywistej
was supposed to encourage people to build this new
z dystansem
socialist reality. Of course,
zdając
today
sobie
we
sprawę,
see this having this wider,
film
this bigger picture,
popełnił.
right? We know what
Tutaj już miał
was the
charakter
function, what was the
bardziej
aim of
popularyzatorski,
such a production. The
zaletnował
second
znaczącą
video you saw,
właściciela
this
globalnego
was already
kapitała
shot by, in a new reality,
ArcelorMittal.
by the
To
global owner of the
rzeczywiście
steelworks and these
gospodarki
plants by
rynkowej,
ArcelorMittal.
zglobalizowanej,
This is now the market economy reality, globalized economy. We're in a
po
different world
1989
now
roku, kiedy
after
po
1989,
zakończyła się zimna
when
wojna,
the Cold War ended.
często się mówi o upadku
And
europejskiego
symbolically,
świata.
we refer to this
Polska
moment
stała
in
się
time
krajem demokratycznym,
by
niezależnym
referring
od
to the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Związku
And Poland
Radzieckiego,
became independent then from the
przekształcając
USSR.
swoje
And
struktury
we
społeczno-gospodarcze w kierunku
transitioned to a new
gospodarki
social
rynkowej,
and
co
political
ułatwiło
model.
instytucje
We went
demokratyczne,
in the
zaś
direction of market economy, a new society, and
znamy z
this
doświadczenia naszych ostatnich lat.
is something we're well familiar with because it is our experience. It has been our share. And then we exceeded NATO
Unii
and
Europejskiej,
the
czyli
EU.
organizacji
So
Świata Zachodniego,
organizations of the Western
Partnerstwa
world, we
Euroatlantyckiego.
became part of the Euro-Atlantic
I
world
wiązało
and
się to również z
its
wejściem w pole
organizations.
globalnego kapitału w tych
That's
czasach,
when the global
kiedy
capital
te
entered
części
Poland and
polskiego przemysłu
the
były
parts
konkurencyjne z
of
punktu widzenia
Poland
podziału
where
handlu, podziału kapitału
industry
i ujęcia
was
globalnym. Tu
competitive,
opłacało się pracować
globally
w latach
competitive.
90. w
This is where the
Polsce. To,
capital
co teraz mówię o Polsce, w dużym
went
stopniu
to
dotyczy
back in the
trzecich krajów
1990s.
Europy
And
Środkowo-Wschodniej,
what I
takich
say
jak
about Poland, this
Poland,
refers roughly to other
Baltyki.
countries from
Jest to
Eastern and Central
ewidentnie
Europe. So I believe my colleagues from Romania might identify with
rysy
what I'm
historyczne
saying, and they
w
might
swoich krajach.
identify a similar events, similar historical outlines in
Następnie
their
oczywiście
countries, in
pewne
their
procesy
country's history.
szły
And now
w
moving
kierunku
on,
ekonomizacji
the
produkcji,
processes we
zysków
witnessed
i strat. Rozwijaliśmy
were more closely,
rzeczywiście
became more closely related with
przekopujemy w stronę
a
naszej
return on investment
konkurencyjności,
thinking, capital
konkurencyjności. To
market
jest
thinking.
dotknięcie
And now
rynku
the main challenge that we're
funkcjonowania przemysłu
discussing
hutniczego.
is the rentability
Podobnie
of
w związku
functioning of the whole steelworks industry. In Europe, this is connected with many different factors. Among them, we might list the increase in the prices of energy and the increase of production costs. And by this, I mean not only the costs of labor, but the cost of energy, because this is energy intensive sector. And also this is a sector where there's quite a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So we know that this is quite a difficult topic in the EU. It's linked to the ETS system. And my colleagues, when they spoke yesterday, they mentioned the availability of scrap metal, because right now it's mostly from scrap metal that steel is produced, at least in Poland. And there are a lot of other challenges that we had the chance to listen about yesterday. This is the point from which we can move on to discussing EWCs and discussing their role as bodies that deal with transnational matters that operate on the area of the EU that operate multinationally. And this touches upon managing models in big corporations, investment strategies, optimization strategies that are now applied when it comes to production, and a series of other important matters. This is now the subject of consultation processes and information processes in EWCs. And naturally, after these two films, we now feel even instinctively why the issue of European Green Deal is such an important element, and now the subject of conversations and talks in EWCs. This is just natural, just like digitization. You may have noticed when you saw the films, when you watched the films, that in the second film, in the steelworks, you see hardly any people there. Instead, what you see is electronic equipment that allows people to manage production processes remotely. This is the result of modernization, of retrofitting. This influences not only the efficiency and effectiveness of production processes, it also influences the working conditions of workers, and it is closely linked with the need to upskill and to obtain competences necessary to service to use the state-of-the-art equipment. So we have a whole series, an array of topics that will be the subject of discussions in EWCs.
And now, moving on to our agenda. Today, we wanted to focus mostly on interaction, and two workshops have been planned for today. The first one, before the break, will be about capacity building among the members of EWCs. As you can see, EWCs can discuss on a wide range of topics. So the members must be really well prepared to play their role and function properly. First of all, they need to understand the materials they have been given to discuss, and then they need to take a position and perhaps also propose some solutions which will be good for the workforce. So they need to know a lot. They need certain expertise and skills to be able to, first of all, recognize what's in the interest of employees, and then try to advocate for employees, and also effectively achieve the goals they have set themselves, such as, for example, improving the working conditions at large multinational companies. The second workshop planned for today is about best practices. Best practices related to EWCs and their operation. Best practices are always welcome. So it will be a good opportunity for all of us to share what best practices we know. And first of all, let's start this workshop session on capacity building and on promoting the establishment of new EWCs at multinational companies. Let me give you an introduction. And at present, EWCs operate only in 1/3 of multinational corporations which could establish them, which have the right to establish them. And so there is a huge room for improvement and development. And that's why I would like us to brainstorm how we can effectively promote EWCs as the body for information and consultation, and also how can we promote creation of new EWCs, and how can we strengthen the competencies of existing EWCs, including the newly established ones, but also the ones that have operated for quite some time. And now I would like to give you the floor, and we have here among our participants some people who have connected remotely. So we will all take the floor, and please tell me, what do you think about strengthening the competencies among the EWCs? What was the process like in your organizations? I would like to take the floor. Good morning, everyone. I am sorry I couldn't come to Malaga, but I have a very difficult family situation right now, and I had to stay at home in Croatia. But I'm happy I can join the meeting online. And I hope that the trade unions in Poland are able to save all the jobs in the steel plants, and that you will not suffer as a result of the restructuring process, and that you will also retain fair wages. In Europe, there is a lot of competition in the metal industry. And there are some manufacturers of these basic materials, and we have to face that fierce competition. So EWCs must provide support to our organizations and companies. And for us, the trade unions, it is important to admit that the prices of energy are rising, but the prices of products also go up. Despite the prices going up, our salaries remain stagnant. That's why EWCs and trade unions also have an important role to play. It's important that EWC members are also trade union members, because then they will have the most up-to-date information, and they will have the legitimacy and empowerment to speak at the European level. I am a member of a trade union, and we get information. Sometimes the information is not good, and I believe we have good communication at our organization. Thank you very much. Thank you for this contribution. And it's good of you to have mentioned that even though the prices for metal products are going up as a result of the rising electricity prices, the wages remain at a flat level. So these things are not consistent, and there is a growing discrepancy between that. And it is a challenge for the workers, of course. Who else would like to say something about capacity building among EWC members? Okay, good morning. Let me remind you one thing. Yusuf, our colleague, is a member of an EWC, and there is an important thing to mention. The trade unions that are members of the EWC of ArcelorMittal, they take advantage of a legal advisor, Syndex, and this company provides us with support, legal support. So the trade unionists are also getting educated. We get materials, we get information about the plans, we get information about the legal background, about what a restructuring process involves. And then once we get the information, we come to the table prepared. And they have background information before they even enter the EWC meeting. So we are very happy with our collaboration with Syndex, and trade union has actually worked with that company since the establishment of the first EWC. And that's good because we are never surprised by the information that our employer gives us. So it's a lessons learned. These conversations at an EWC meeting are never easy. And it's because of the circumstances we live in, because of the steel plants being closed and relocated in Europe by ArcelorMittal. Yusuf also mentioned about the relocation of some capacities to India or to Asia. And it is a very serious matter. So you have to come to the table well prepared. You need to have knowledge. That's why our collaboration with Syndex has been really successful. It's an added value. And this is, I would say, our way of educating ourselves. So we as trade union members and also as humans, we learn all lifelong, and this is one way of doing that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for remarking that and for mentioning this topic. Even yesterday, I'm sure you remember, we mentioned that trade union and members and EWCs could hire experts and specialists, and they could provide training on the directive content. And this training and this expertise is paid for by the employer. Of course, it would be best if the details of that financing mechanism could be agreed between a meeting, could be agreed between the employer and the workers in an agreement. And let's not forget, this is beneficial for the employers as well. If an employer comes to the EWC meeting and on the other side of the table, there are members of EWC who are knowledgeable, who understand the broader context, the conversation which will be so much smoother, will be much more to the point, and will be mutually beneficial. That means the feedback given by the EWCs could also improve the standard or quality of the decisions made by the central management, or could even improve the strategies. So, well, it's a cost for the employer, of course, nobody is denying it, but the company could treat it as the cost of external consultancy. And companies usually spend quite a lot of money on seeking external consultancy or advice about their management strategies. And why not treat the feedback provided by EWC members as kind of expertise, external expertise provided to the company. You can see that our colleague from Croatia would like to take the floor. I'm really happy that all of you are so engaged in our discussions. Hello, good morning. I would like to welcome all of the colleagues in Malaga, but also all the colleagues who connected remotely. I don't have too much experience with EWCs. However, I have quite a lot of experience with works councils at a company level. Unfortunately, there are not many of them, but also we do not have that many multinational companies. And in some situations, it's not only about advocating the interests of the workers. I believe it's not only that. Our trade unions start elections to EWCs so that we can get access to important data about the company, and by doing this, shape the policies and strategies of a company. Let me put it this way. One employer usually has many establishments, and they maybe do not have a detailed knowledge about the operation of each establishment. I believe that at EWCs, the EWCs should also strive to ensure equal pay among all the corporations. Let's say we have Siemens. The workers in Austria in Siemens have much higher salaries than Siemens Poland. And they have established their businesses in Croatia or Poland, not because they love our countries. They did it to simply take advantage of the cheaper labor costs. And some of them are more moderate in their operations. Some of them are more brutal. I have talked about history quite a lot, even though it's not the main topic of our meeting. But there are these wars being waged right now. And we've been talking about Western Europe. We've been talking about the 7 billion people here, and it's not the main topic of today's meeting. These companies are trying to force us to do something we do not want. They are trying to tell us how we should live our lives. So EWCs must ensure that workers of one company in different establishments have the same working conditions. And if the capitalists, if they want to close down a business, they will do it anyway. But what can we do as trade union members or EWC members? We must ensure that our people do not suffer as a result of that. In the metal industry in Croatia, it's practically stagnant. All the steel plants have been closed down. Maybe there's one or two plants still open, but there is very little production happening right now. And there is this SISC company, and it's owned by the US, and the workforce is reduced than before. And on Friday, the company was closed down, and on Monday, the people couldn't even enter the workplace. And people got severance, and the company was purchased by an Italian company. But again, the workforce was further reduced. This means the employers do not love the workers. They only work the production to be as cheap as possible. And if companies reduce the production output, they also do it at the cost of the labor force. So when Croatia was negotiating entry to the EU, we discussed the shipyards. And during the negotiations, our shipyard capacity was reduced. We were trying to fight to not to let it happen, but we failed. And there is just one steel plant left, and the others have marginal importance. So Europe is to blame for the problems it has found itself in. And the capital is really greedy for profit. And so we are now saying the Chinese are mean to us, but it's not that they are mean, it's simply that we were too greedy. That's all from me.
Thank you for this opinion, for sharing your point of view. Yes, this is the criticism that is omnipresent in our debate about the economic model, about the strategies of big capital, and it has been present in our discussions, in the discussions and the industries we're from for many years, and especially in the recent years. I believe that this urge to reach certain level of profits is present, and it is also closely linked with greed, with moral values. It has been happening since 28, since the big crisis, and we can see the consequences of those events. And we all know now that big capital wants to make huge profits. They want to cut down production costs, and they want to use cheaper labor, cheaper, but at the same time highly qualified. And this is the type of labor, the type of workforce that they can find in Central and Eastern Europe and outside of the EU. Hence, the investments made in our countries back in the 1990s, especially in steel industry. Up until now, we haven't yet discussed the topic of financialization and finances. We have been concentrating on production and on this physical, this tangible part of the capital, but simultaneously and parallel to that, to those processes, big companies are introducing their shares to stock exchanges. For instance, ArcelorMittal has its shares in New York on Wall Street. So here another chapter opens up and another area for discussion opens up. This can also be subject to consultation and can be the subject of information and consultation processes in EWCs. My take on that is that the financial aspect of the situation, closely linked to stock exchanges, is connected to materialist capitalism. And a very good example here, I believe, that illustrates the thesis would be something that Józef Kawula mentioned yesterday during our discussion. He talked about protests, about demonstrations in Poland, and the very in Poland and across Europe. And he talked about the quick reaction on the part of ArcelorMittal that wanted to mitigate the situation and not to allow to an escalation, because then they would lose their value, the value of their shares would go down. Of course, pressures were put on the global management of ArcelorMittal because it is them precisely who lose money on such such cases. And this is a topic we haven't been discussing at length. I believe we still do not have enough information to do that, to prepare an in-depth analysis, because of course what is much closer to the heart of all trade unionists is the workplace and the working conditions in steelworks and other plants, and that's for obvious reasons, because this is something that concerns the workers themselves. However, the whole idea, whole concept of how the company is functioning when it comes to its finances, its shares, this is of no less importance. Let me just supplement what you've been saying. From the point of view of trade unions, recent years and the process that has been accelerating, let me call it blackmail, some sort of blackmail that the employer uses towards trade unions. And it boils down to this. If you don't agree to cutting down wages, to freezing wage increases, then I can just dismantle the rolling plant and I can move it all to India and mount it back up and put it up there. This is what we've been talking about, and this is where the problem lies. The capital goes where the money is. Capital is looking for money and they're looking for the lowest possible cost. There has to be a limit to all this madness, because behind all this are human dramas, is the pauperization of entire working groups. As like you saw in the films, steelworks industry is an energy-intensive industry, also in the sense that workers, after having worked for 30 years in such conditions, they have their illnesses, they have their chronic conditions, and after 30 years, they might learn that they're just the costs that need to be reduced, because the company might move its production to Africa, where the labor costs are cheaper. It has a whole psychological side, because imagine how these people feel. And this is something that we come across on a daily basis as members of a trade union. And this is also something that's not as visible, has less visibility than other matters, but it is a topic that resonates very much with us. I come from the railway industry, and this also is happening in our industry. In our company, we have been observing Mittal for quite some time. And let me just put it for you in the bigger perspective. The length of railway tracks in Kraków, where the steel plant, the Lenin Steel Works, was in operation, was around 220 kilometers. Now it's 80 kilometers in Kraków. So these are real costs. This is a human cost. People, after many years of work, when they're ill, they just learn that they will get severance pay and that their contract is terminated, and the whole world, their world, falls apart. The propaganda film we all saw, it showed those people that upskilled, that became engineers, that became construction workers. This was a form of social advancement, and this is something that shouldn't be ridiculed. It's very important, and it's extremely crucial to the creation of a new society. And imagine that these people, after 30, 50 years, they learn that they can be replaced or done away with. It's something very hard, and this is something we have been coming across as trade unionists on a daily basis. The pressure on profit is extreme, and as Dominic said, this is a listed company, so the whole management is putting a lot of emphasis on profit, but behind all that are real human dramas. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this voice in our discussion, your opinion, and the wider perspective that shows us historical perspective, and it shows us the perspective of each and every worker back in the 1950s, 60s, where the steel plants were constructed in Poland. The workers had the sense of participating in a greater whole and participating in the process where the whole country is being built, where the future of the country is being built, even if the sovereignty of the country was limited, to put it mildly. But they had this sense of agency, and right now, in this psychological sense, when it comes to their dignity and their mental well-being, when the workers learn that they're only one element in the whole global machinery of capitalism, well, this can really take a toll on their lives. In my opinion, this is a very important aspect that we should all have in the back of our heads, and we should talk about it. It should be addressed not only by the employers, including big corporations, but also it should be addressed by public policies. It should be the area of interest of public policies, because they're here to build social cohesion, to build social capital, and to build the health and to take care of the health and well-being of the society as a whole. This is an important matter that we should all bear in mind. It should be taken into account when waging profits and losses. Let me now go back to how we can build the potential of members of EWCs. Maybe we have some good examples here. We heard that there's a system, a network of support, like the Syndex company that provides legal services, and it's a highly specialized company, a professional company. Maybe some other examples that you're willing to share to give us. Anyone? Yes, of course. What constitutes big support to all work councils that are part of industrial, it's industrial. It provides training and support, like the person of Jose Manuel. And in addition to that, from each and every country, a negotiator, a mediator was selected for this new agreement, for negotiating the new agreement. I have been part of the team for 6 years now, and we are supported by an expert. He's a lawyer that only deals with situations and cases like these. And of course, there is a willingness on the part of the owner to sign the agreement. Of course, they voiced their opinion and it was positive, but they're not very willing to sign the agreement. In the situation is this: in December, we're at the plenary session, and then we're passing a regulation that allows us to prolong the term for another year. We have a lot of good provisions. So far, we've had 1 plenary session and 3 information meetings. Now it's 4 plenary sessions, and one of them is participated. It is happening with the participation of deputies as well. So once every half term, and the term lasts for 4 years, one every half term, we go to not necessarily Luxembourg, but for instance, France. We went to Anneville. There's a research institute, ArcelorMittal Research Institute, where they're focusing on the whole production cycle. It's like a mini version of the steelworks. There's a slab being produced there, and they have an electrical kiln. And they have the whole production cycle recreated there, because they want to see how the use of various additives, various mixes influences the plasticity of the material that comes out. And we had a training there, and the training was very good, because in the training both sides participate and the trainers. So this is something very valuable. Our organization is part of the All Poland Alliance, and we have a group. It's the second term of the group, a problem working group. Let me call it this way. And we also have experts there. One of them was even about to join us here, and we're exchanging experiences there. We exchanging views, and this has real impact, real influence on how we work, how we discuss matters with the employer. But as I've mentioned yesterday, not all employers have trade unions that are against them. We mentioned Leviathan, we mentioned other organizations. We have projects that are joint projects, and we can actually function like a good marriage does. So really, need to bear that in mind. It's just that sometimes you need to have the will on both sides, both the trade union and the employer. There has to be the will on both sides so that it works. We're all fighting for one cause. We want the plant to function well, to be prosperous, and this is our mentality, this is our attitude, and this is something that we're, I believe, showcasing in each discussion, in each demonstration. You remember we discussed the E48 severance pay, and some of my colleagues from Romania here were shocked by the amount of money that was paid to the workers. But this is how it works. If the employer decides that it no longer pays off to have a plant here and there, please let's suggest a good severance pay to your employees that will be laid off. Thank you. Yes, yes, looking for this common ground is key. I agree completely. And an employer cannot attain their goals without the workers, without the employees. So there is codependence here, and it is important to balance the profits and the working conditions, both these types of parameters, so that both sides can meet halfway, perhaps. Very well. Do we have some other comments, some other remarks? I jotted down in my notes advisory services and trainings provided by external experts. So these are elements that are in the directive, but also study visits in research centers that constitute an element of training, yes, but they have a practical element to them, a practical aspect to them. They allow to see the production processes, to see the working conditions, and to have this knowledge to improve those processes. One more thing from me. When it comes to improvement, development, the companies that will create the European Work Councils, they should read on the materials, on all the agreements that they are available at Industrial. They need to know what should be put in the rules and regulations and in the agreement. So for instance, the right to have an expert, like we have the company called Syndex, the right to hold meetings, settling the costs of, for instance, interpreting, translation, access to interpreters, access to translated documents. We never imagined that documents can be translated online through a Google Translator. This can be done, of course, but each and every document should be translated by a translation agency. It should be translated by a particular law firm. Sometimes it's a matter of a comma or a colon where it changes the meaning of the whole sentence. So it's very important, and we should put all that in our agreements that we're negotiating. We have delegated workers, delegated members of trade unions, and this is something that also can be put in EWC agreement. We can put there a provision that says that constant member of an EWC can be delegated to go to a production hall or somewhere else, because we have various locations, and sometimes one location is 100 kilometers away from another, and we need the time and resources to travel between these locations. And Jose Manuel keeps on saying, and the lawyers from industrial keep on saying, that our agreement might be the best one in Europe. Sometimes it's a knives out situation, but we usually arrive at a common ground, not by yelling, not by fighting, but we're just doing our best to conduct these talks, and we are now issuing an opinion on moving those structures and production plants to India. Syndex didn't receive any information yet as to who will make money on that and how much money. Our possibilities are now shrinking. It's also because we're learning about a lot of things from the press. And it's a double-sided sword, because now the situation is this: we will organize a demonstration without notifying the employer. We did that already. We notified them half an hour earlier, saying that we're downstairs and that we have TV from Luxembourg, from France with us. And in 10 minutes, suddenly they asked us to give them all of our questions. It was on Wednesday, I believe. So they asked us to bring all our postulates or our questions, and they said that they would give us answers. We now have all the answers, and Jose Manuel even laughed at it, and he said that probably next week we will sign an agreement. I don't know about that, but we have the answers to the questions that were so pressing, matters that were so pressing and important to us. One thing that's important to notice, to say, there's no profit for us in doing that. And India, a digital city of the 22nd century, I guess, was created. It's so full of state-of-the-art technology that for a person such as myself, when I'm there, it seems like I've been moved to space, to outer space. And the people that are to work there, they are to work for 16 to 20 hours a day. And we here in Europe, we work for 8 hours a day. I don't know why this is happening, whether there are some considerations that have been taken into account here. I don't know why it is happening. But as of today, we're trying to agree on the terms that we want to negotiate. We also got a piece of information saying that our office building will be cleaned once every 2 weeks. I don't know what we would do.
No, dicevo, tutto il mondo è paese, la stessa cosa.
Well, I would say the situation is the same everywhere else. from what I've been hearing from you, we are facing the same problems wherever we go. If I can help in any way, let me tell you about the situation we have in Italy. There is a large transport company, Trenitalia, which operates in 7 EU countries: France, Germany, Spain, the UK. So it's present there, as well as in Italy, of course. But around November, they've decided to give a 30% rise to all the managers. Why was that? Because they made so much money, they didn't know what to do with it. Meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, or even last week, that was, we signed an agreement with the workers, and their salaries were cut and their working hours were increased. So we took away money from the workers and we gave a generous pay rise to the managers. Something's wrong here, something's fishy here. And I think this happens wherever you go, whether it's a steel plant or a train company. We are facing the same issues, and it's not right. It shouldn't be like that. So we should change the way we see a company. So let's say 4 people make decisions about the lives of thousands of people. That's not the way it should be. Something must change. Something's not right here. I hope that everybody is starting to grasp it. And yesterday I said, let's fight as the Europeans. Let's feel this European spirit. And it's the only way to go and the only way forward if we want to change anything. Well, in Poland, at ArcelorMittal Poland, we managed to come to an agreement, and there was a clause about the preferential rates at which young people are hired. Because usually in the past, when they hired a new worker, a young person, they offered him or her the lowest salary possible. It was roughly 1,000 euro, and we raised it by 500 euro. So they cannot offer anything below that. And it's roughly 5,400 Polish zlotys, and it's a gross salary. And this is a firm thing. It's been guaranteed by the employer. And if the minimum wage is going up, this preferential rate is also going up. So this is the thing we have achieved. Let me add something to what Giorgio said. And it was about feeling as being Europeans. So in Poland, we do not have any satisfaction from the fact that ArcelorMittal focused on these steel plants in Europe. So far, whenever they closed down a plant or cut down cost, it was only in Poland. So in the last 5 years, they closed down the furnace, the coking plant, the processing plants, and all of that. And when nothing of that sort was happening in the West, we never got any support from them because their businesses were up and running. But when they started closing down the plants in Western Europe or reducing cost, then some of the things they are doing are ridiculous. So now they are also facing problems, and the trade unionists from Western Europe are now also surprised. why are you relocating this production plant to or these services to India? We're not feeling satisfied with that, that they have also been affected. But I believe that we should all feel this solidarity. We must support each other. We must protect the working world. And I believe we have to act jointly, all the establishments, all the branches, everyone. Because you can play one country against the other if you are a big business. And if we stick together, then the business cannot do that. Thank you.
Okej, czy mamy tutaj jeszcze jakieś głosy, czy wśród uczestników tutaj?
All right.
Online?
Any other comments from this room or the online participants? Any comments or thoughts? If not, then perhaps we could take a break now, because I believe we have contributed enough to the topic of building capacity of the EWC members. Okay, so let's start a break and let's come back here at 12:30. Thank you very much for these videos, and thank you very much for telling us about the situation, explaining what happened at that time after World War II. And the discussion was really so interesting. I think we deserved coffee now. Thank you. Happy to see all of you back at the
Yes, so
table.
we're about to start. Teraz po przerwie kawowej mamy troszeczkę.
All right, we've had a coffee break and now we are invigorated to start the second workshop today. Or we can also continue the workshop session we had before the break. However, this time we will focus mostly on best practices and on cases, showcases that we can share so that we can apply this knowledge to EWC's operation in other companies or in other sectors as well. Let me open the second workshop session. We've had some informal conversations during the break, and I'm sure our Polish colleagues would like to share their experiences and tell us about some examples from the operation of EWCs, but also some examples of the shaping of policies in the context of the European Green Deal. But I encourage everyone to join the conversation and share some best practices from your countries or from your organizations. I want to also make a housekeeping remark. We are planning to start our lunch at 1 p.m. So we are slightly changing our plans. So please take that into consideration. All right, I would like to hand over to Marek. Happy to see you after the break. And just like Dominic said, I'd like to share with you some very recent experience. So we've had this demonstration on the 21st of May last week in Warsaw. And the scale of the event was big. It was roughly 10,000 people that joined the protest, and they were from various sectors, the metal industry, chemical industry, some people from the mining industry, and also the cement industry, and they are also affected by the Green Deal policies, quite painfully. It was well organized, it was very professional, and our trade union was there under the umbrella of All Poland Trade Union Alliance, and that trade union was actually one of the organizers of this demonstration. 10,000 people joined the demonstration, and it shows the determination of people to defend workplaces. We convened at noon in Warsaw in front of the Parliament building, and there were some speeches by our leaders. And it usually happens with such demonstrations. It was loud. There was a ban on using these rockets, and some people were really sad about this because they prepared some rockets to fire and make some noise. But what's most important is that it was the first time that we felt the support from the employers. And it was, for example, logistics support. The employers paid for the buses that brought people to the demonstration. There was not a problem to take a day off to join the demonstration. So I can safely say that when the house is burning, everybody wants to put out the fire because it's our own house. And everybody recognized it's our common problem. And often we say that we only learn a lesson when something has gone wrong. Well, let's not be like that. Let's get prepared. Let's take some precautions. Without workforce, there is no company. Without company, the businesses go bankrupt. These are all connecting vessels. The situation is serious. The demonstration took more than 2 hours, and then the entire crowd moved through the Aleje Ujazdowskie to the building where our Prime Minister resides. And then there were some items on the agenda that have been covered. And all the leaders in their speeches highlighted the seriousness of the situation. And a written petition was submitted and signed by the leaders of the biggest trade unions. And I can say that from the point of view of my organization, this has been the first time that people stood united. That means we are really determined. It was also an emotional event. Some positive and negative emotions were there. So it is, I'm sorry to say that it has taken this very difficult situation for the employers and the workers to join forces and stand united. And this demonstration, supported by employers, has shown us that we act in the interest of everybody, the companies, but also the people. And a strong message was conveyed from that demonstration. It was publicized heavily. It was on social media. It was on professional websites. The scale of the event was really good. And it shows that we are in trouble. And to conclude my contribution, I want to say that we are determined, we are scared about what is about to happen. We don't know why the things are happening, why manufacturing capacities are cut down in Europe. And this type of policy and our lack of reaction may even give rise to populist trends in Europe. And then our efforts may not be enough. For the people who work, they want to feel secure. And so far, Europe has felt as a secure place to live and work. But now the situation has changed. Plants are being closed down or relocated. People are getting scared. And when you're scared, you make sometimes bad decisions. So let us not let it happen. Thank you. Thank you very much for telling us about this situation. And we really need to take into consideration the political context of that. So the policies are not clear enough. They are quite ambiguous, and that's why they raise a lot of questions. And these questions are asked both by employees and employers. And this can give rise to a lot of negative consequences. So it's better to prepare a strategy, whether you are a business or whether you are a trade union, when you operate in a certain environment. But when the situation is unclear, then many negative tendencies can occur. And this may even enable some populist movements to gain importance, and they may do some things that we do not want with that. Okay, over to our colleague from Croatia. Hello again. I'd like to respond to the decision made by the European Commission and the so-called European government. Speaking from my personal experience, some decisions have been premature. Introducing the Green Deal is expensive. We know all about that. And the companies in Croatia also have to go through that. And then if you want to move the dirty technology elsewhere, there is nothing green about this, because you will simply pollute the environment elsewhere. So I think that Europe has adopted too strict measures. But when these measures are to be implemented, we simply need to adopt clean technologies or cleaner technologies, rather than just say, let's stop producing that. And then what's left for us to do? Just import some steel that has been manufactured outside of the EU using the dirty technologies. And it's not only the steel industry that is in trouble. Also, the power companies also are facing difficulties. If you want to produce energy from renewable resources, for example, from rivers, then you change the water situation in a given area. Also, if you use solar energy, then what are you going to do with the used parts from that technology? And also, we need to have a safe reserve of fossil fuels for situations when there is no wind, no sun, and no hydro electricity. In Spain, there was an interruption of the power grid, so we need to be on the safe side and have a reserve. And also, I believe that the European Union has set us unreasonable timeframes to achieve all the goals. The manufacturing companies cannot simply adapt their productions within such a short period of time. That's all from me. Thank you. Thank you, Sinisha. Yes, I believe our conclusions would be quite similar. I have heard voices and tone of similar voices before, also with other research projects. So a question arises: what could be the stabilizing agent for these renewable resources? And there is no consensus on that within the EU. And the European authorities do not appoint or point out to any solution. Individual states are left to deal with that on their own. Just let's look at Germany or Spain. They have moved away from nuclear power. And especially in Germany, it was a lengthy process. And it also came as a result of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in the early 1980s. I think, no, in the late 1980s. And the decision was taken to minimize any potential risk of a disaster at the nuclear plant by reducing the power mix from nuclear. And that process was planned for 20 or 30 years. And then, of course, renewable energy were to replace that power, but there was no mention of a stabilizing agent. And we saw that the lack of a stabilizing agent is never a good idea, because several weeks ago in Spain, there was a blackout and it was quite long in duration. It was a couple of days long at least, or more than several dozen hours. On the other hand, other countries in the EU, for example, Poland, we want to build our own nuclear power plant. So our strategies seem to be quite opposite, even within the EU, because there is no consensus about that. And this may give rise to the lack of understanding among the general public, because what do we know about the nuclear power being just an average citizen? How should we shape our energy mix? We don't know that. And also we are under strong pressure to implement the decarbonization measures and to implement the policies under the European Green Deal. So a question arises. Shouldn't the EU institutions or authorities consolidate their standpoint, and shouldn't they communicate that standpoint to the public so that people start accepting these policies slowly and gradually? Luca, over to you.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. I would also like to give my contribution to our discussion, especially when it comes to the topic of the Green Deal. I work in a company that is responsible for the production of energy, but energy as a whole is a very difficult topic. And there are a lot of ways in which we can produce energy. And yes, of course, the EU, and we have to be aware of that, the EU is not just one state like the USA. We're all in our own community, and each member state has its own plans. For instance, France, in the 80% of France uses nuclear power. It's not precise data, but that's like I remember it. When it comes to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, nuclear energy is the greenest energy there is. And in Germany, for instance, to make it happen, large investments would have to be made. Germany used cheap gas, natural gas from Russia, and it paid off for them to do so. What else? Due to the war in Ukraine, Germany no longer wants natural gas from Russia, so many problems arise. And now the gist of my contribution. Each member state wants to take care of its interests. We're not one single organism, and we need to cooperate. We need to communicate and talk to one another. And in my opinion, politicians started to talk about the time frame for the Green Deal too soon. I believe that politicians should include experts in their talks and in their discussions and decision-making processes, because when you ask a politician, where does electricity come from? He would say from the socket. Well, you put in the cable and there it is. And for some, the question of green transition is a question that needs expert knowledge. We can't make decisions without this expert knowledge and expertise from our specialists. That's the main message, I guess, I'm trying to pass on.
Oj, przepraszam bardzo. Przepraszam, miałem wyłączony mikrofon.
Excuse me, please excuse me, my mic was off. I will not repeat myself, but I will just say this. We agree We definitely share this viewpoint that was presented now by my colleague from Croatia. And now anyone else, would anyone else like to share their views and experience? Well, I'd like to share something, maybe not an experience, but in the context of what has just been said by my colleague from Croatia. We need education, education, and once again, education. And we should educate companies, we should educate politicians, everyone. But let's not also get paranoid, because some time ago I read that in France, people won't be able to water their plants with rainwater, and something's wrong here, right? In Poland, well, I live in a detached house. I collect rainwater and I use it to water my plants, my trees. And in France, it soon won't be possible. Something's not right here. I'm not sure in which direction they're headed. Okay, thank you. Maybe someone else, other participants of today's meeting would like to share some good practices or maybe comment on how policies are made in relation to the European Green Deal and digitization, because I believe these are the two topics, two areas that we have touched upon most frequently during our meeting.
Może tak króciutko, no, ważne, żeby z Zielonym Ładem nie
In
przesadzić.
short, I believe it's important to not overdo things with the Green Deal, because when we implement the European Green Deal in Europe or in the EU, we have become less competitive in some industries. So I believe this is of the utmost relevance at this point. We withdrew from coal and prices of energy went up. So now, before we replace it with green energy, the introduction of PV arrays won't do because we need more time. And before we build a nuclear power plant, yet many more years will pass. And in the meantime, we have to face the rising prices of energy. And as you all know, there were various programs connected with the introduction of heat pumps or PV installations. And it turns out that our grids are not, transmission grids are not very well adapted to these new types of energy, renewable energy. So first, perhaps we need to modernize and to adapt our grids, and only then we need to prepare programs that would finance the various types of green energy and RES installations. I remember some time ago, a couple of years ago, I collaborated with a Norwegian company, and they wanted to construct a small water plant in Poland. We had a lot of old mills, and it seemed like this could work. A lot of paperwork was involved, and the Norwegians thought that we all have cash, that we all have this possibility to obtain a cheap loan. And for instance, here in Lesser Poland, where we have more mountains, that it would be a solution that's easy to implement. And then after 3 years, the company disappeared from the market. After having installed just maybe 3 such small installations, it turned out the energy can't be produced just for your own use, and you have to resell it to a public utility facility, and only then you can buy it back for your own use. And it was some time ago still, and many users, many people could not afford such investments. We see the result of this now. No one analyzes the situation. No one analyzes, for instance, how many cars are in France with batteries that are no longer functioning, and we don't know how to waste manage all that.
związane z zieloną chemią.
It's not only about green energy, it's also about green chemistry, where certain substances are treated, undergo treatment. Of course, it's all natural, but this sudden change, this sudden transition from fossil fuels to green energy, this only increased the prices of energy and the production of energy. This in turn translates into our lower competitiveness.
Dziękuję bardzo za ten głos. Rzeczywiście to jest.
Thank you for this. Thank you for your opinion. Yes, of course, this is yet another example of how the European Green Deal policies prioritized decarbonization, while at the same time, those more detailed policies, the decisions, particular decisions, were not well adapted to the wider perspective, to the context of each and particular member state. And this resulted in a lot of paradoxical situations, absurd investments. The development of RES installations in Poland, for instance, might cause the collapse of the whole energy system. And I agree completely that first we need to modernize the existing network, the existing grid and all the installations, and only then we should make new installations, RES installations, so that individual users and industries can make use of this new energy, so that the energy is not dispersed in the network and the grid. It's a bottleneck, I believe, investments made in renewables in Poland. Very often they are pointless. Maybe that's a strong word. There is meaning and there is sense in that, but it boils down to the order of investments. First, you need to adapt the network, the grid, and only then you can invest in new RES installations. Very well then. Do we have any more comments here or remarks? Let me sum up with one sentence. So far, the medicine is worse than the disease. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Like our moderator and specialist in the EU policies, among them Green Deal, we will go to lunch in just a moment. For now, I'd like to thank you for participating in today's discussion. It's really wonderful when we can meet on site and not remotely, not in front of our computers, but we can really meet in person. It has been a wonderful time, and thank you for all your inputs. It was really interesting to listen to all your remarks and comments, not only today, because we had a lot of meetings and sessions and interviews, and all this material contributed to the creation of short brochures that sum up our work here in the project. Once again, thank you for today's meeting. It's a pity that not everyone could come here to Malaga because the weather here is just perfect. I also had the chance to go to my boss to Croatia, to the boss in Croatia, and we also had great weather there. We did a joint project there, and I had a lovely time. Croatia is a wonderful country, just like most of our countries and most of European countries. Once again, for now, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would also like to thank our interpreters for their hard work. I do know what it means and how hard it is, because very often during EWC meetings, we have discussions that are 3-4 hours long, and our interpreters have to work for 3 to 4 hours straight with no breaks. It's really hard. They cannot replace one word with another. They can't lose the meaning. And I do understand that it's a hard work. It's very intense during trainings with interpreters. We always want to have those sessions that last 1 hour and a half and then a 20-minute break. I've talked to interpreters and they said this is the perfect time frame. I don't know if you've ever been to an interpreting booth. It's very hot there. It's very, the air is so dense. So the more so, a big round of applause to our interpreters. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad that we could meet here in this beautiful place. So let's enjoy this and have a nice afternoon and a nice evening. Once again, a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Hopefully we will have another project together and I will gladly see all of you. Thank you.